Today, we're actually going to do part one of a two-part series and talking all things hormone imbalance and libido and overall health. And is there a connection? In that, what are some of the symptoms? What can cause hormone imbalance? And then in part two, we're going to talk about what you can do about it. If we've not met, I am Dr. Renee. I'm also known as the libidoologist. I help high achieving women regain their energy, lose weight, and improve their libido holistically. So we're going to dive right in because today we're going to cover hormone imbalance as it pertains to female hormones, specifically estrogen dominance. Now, this is a hot topic out there. I know. And I just wanted to sort of go take a deep dive into estrogen dominance, talk about some of the symptoms, talk about some of the causes. And like I said, part two, we're going to go into what you can do about it. But before we get into it, I just want to remind you, I am not your doctor. So be sure to seek care from your own personal doctor if you have a concern that you want addressed. I put this information out there to educate you, to inform you. Now, who's looking for this information? Two types of women. Number one, the woman who thinks she has a hormone imbalance, has a low libido, probably has other symptoms like low energy, high stress, weight gain, and she's looking for answers because she doesn't want to go to her doctor because she knows her doctor will probably give her something prescription that she really doesn't need, and she wants to try to do it on her own. That's number one. Number two, the woman who's gone to her doctor with symptoms and has been told either they're normal because of her age or that her labs are normal, so she must be normal and that she just has to essentially suck it up. Now, if you're in either of those two camps, welcome, because this is definitely the place for you. What we're going to talk about is actually just raising awareness about estrogen dominance, some of the symptoms, and then what could be contributing to it. All right. So number one, let's talk about some of the symptoms, because you could be here saying, okay, I have all of those. I call it the triple threat, the weight gain, the low libido, and low energy, usually related to high stress. And I think I do have a hormone imbalance that is potentially contributing to it, but I don't know for sure. What are the symptoms? Symptoms are generally menstrual problems like heavier period, crampier period, longer period, irregular periods, all the period stuff, breast tenderness, worsening PMS symptoms, headaches. Two of the things I see the most, irritability or like mood changes and weight gain. And then you could also have like fatigue and other, joint pain, other non-specific, doesn't seem related to hormones, specifically female hormones, but could be. So if you fall in that category and you have what I call the triple threat, listen up, because we're going to talk about what potentially could be causing the estrogen dominant picture. Now, when we're talking about estrogen dominance, here's what I really want to make clear. It may not necessarily be that you're producing too much. I think when we all think of, estrogen, female hormone, comes from our ovaries. I must be making too much. Yes, that could be, but there's other reasons why you might be estrogen dominant or have that picture. But yes, number one, I've worked with hundreds of thousands of women in my career, my 20 plus years in medicine. I was over 15 years in OBGYN. I have to say, as a gynecologist, I didn't check a ton of hormone levels. I was one of those docs, so I can say that now. You would come to me and I would say, well, you're not in menopause. You're not trying to get pregnant. I don't suspect polycystic ovarian syndrome. You're not a girl with an early period. So I'm not going to check hormone levels. There were very specific criteria of women that I would check their hormone levels. And if you didn't fit those criteria, I didn't check your hormone levels. Okay. And again, those were generally young girls who got their periods early, women that were trying to get pregnant, women that I suspected something called polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I have to admit, and I hate to admit it, but I didn't always check or recommend checking hormones if you thought you were in menopause. If you were a year without your period, I'd be like, congratulations, you're in menopause. What do we need to check? So I would say there's a handful of women that would actually check, but not all the time. So I was one of those doctors, which is why I can say that now, that if you could come to me and I, number one, may not want to do your blood work. So there's the third subset of women that might be watching this video, or everything comes back and it's normal. I'm like, oh, it's normal. You're just gonna have to live with it. Okay. So you could be that you're producing too much. And again, sometimes we see this on labs, sometimes we don't. Your hormones fluctuate over generally a 28-day cycle. Your estrogen fluctuates up and down, so does your progesterone. So a lot of times when we do get blood work in a routine blood work panel, it's a snapshot. Okay. Number two, you may not be breaking down the estrogen appropriately and or eliminating it. And that comes down to liver and gut. And the third is that this is what I see most commonly. Your body is not making enough progesterone, which is the other female hormone, to balance out the estrogen. They're like yin and yang. They are like the perfect couple, right? Estrogen's a little irritable, a little high energy, a little, but she gives us soft, plush skin and gorgeous long hair and all the things. And then there's progesterone that keeps us calm, might slow our gut a little bit. So it might cause a little constipation if that's a little overdone, high levels, which I generally never see someone with a high progesterone level unless they're supplementing with progesterone. Okay. So we really want the two of them to be together and balanced for us to feel good. And as soon as the scale gets tipped one way or the other, again, generally with estrogen dominance, is when we see these symptoms. And again, it's generally from us probably not making as much progesterone. And this often is seen in women from like mid 30s through 50s. It's called perimenopause, whereby a lot of things are happening that can disrupt our progesterone. And we're going to talk about some of that coming up. But number two, our eggs are getting older and we're not making enough progesterone in our body. Okay. So again, I covered three things. Maybe we're making too much, maybe we're not getting rid of it, or maybe in relation to progesterone, it's just a lot higher. That is, estrogen's a lot higher than progesterone. Okay. So what could be causing a higher estrogen level? Well, one of the reasons why an actual production issue might be part of the picture is when we are overweight. Adipose tissue or fat tissue actually can serve as what we call an endocrine organ and make estrogen, specifically around the belly part. So if you suspect maybe you're from your mid 30s to 50s, so you already have like a little imbalance because of the progesterone factor. But if you are desiring weight loss because you feel like you're a little overweight or maybe obese, adipose tissue definitely could be a factor there. I see it a lot more in women that are menopausal, but definitely could be a factor in the perimenopausal phase as well. And that could be contributing to your symptoms of estrogen dominance. Toxins, and this is a big one. Now, I want to preface this by saying, we can't put you in a bubble, right? Like toxins are everywhere. The purpose of me educating you on toxins is for you to figure out where you can eliminate them in your day-to-day life so we can help you get rid of them and decrease what we call your body burden or your toxic overload or load. So your body's not having to detoxify a lot of other things from your environment. Okay. So don't go putting yourself in a bubble. Don't get anxious. Don't get stressed. But here's a few things that I want to put on your radar for you to potentially think about. Yeah, I do that. Maybe I need to cut that out. Okay. Number one, and these are all potential endocrine disrupting chemicals. Okay. So all the things I'm going to discuss right now could potentially contain these EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals that can disrupt your hormones. Endocrine essentially means hormones. So they're hormone disrupting chemicals in these toxins. Number one, ladies, we love to clean the house, but a lot of those cleaning products contain them. Number two, ladies, I'm speaking to you again. personal care products, beauty products, laden with toxins that affect our hormones. Okay. Number 3, plastics, big on my list. If you're in my world, you know, I always talk about plastics, big endocrine disruptor. Number 4, food containing pesticides and hormones. And I just actually finished a training in my Facebook community, which I'll be sure to put the link below for that. It's going to be a 3-part series talking about how to naturally balance your hormones. And today was specifically focused on diet. So if you're interested in more information on this topic, be sure to join the Facebook community, whereby I talk about things like this in there behind closed doors as well. But I wanted, you know, there specifically, I talked about guidance, but just so you know, certain foods that are heavily sprayed with pesticides or meats that animals that were given hormones or food, including pesticides, and then we eat it. These all can disrupt our hormones. And last but not least, alcohol. Alcohol in and of itself can increase your estrogen levels, but not only that, we talked earlier about one of the reasons we're not getting rid of it, and it's from the liver. What you have to know about alcohol is it's essentially a poison. Okay. Yes, I love wine. I drink wine, but also knowing that my body, when I do drink a glass of wine, is going to prioritize breaking that alcohol down. And so your liver actually has to prioritize over everything else, every macronutrient, any food you eat. Like it's going to be like, where's the poison coming into my body, and break it down before breaking down any of your food, any toxins, any hormones, anything else. Okay. So alcohol consumption in of itself will increase your estrogen levels, but then it'll prevent you from eliminating or breaking down, not even eliminating, breaking down your estrogens, because your liver has other things to do. Okay. If you're deficient in certain minerals like magnesium is super important for hormone production. Vitamin D, also important for hormone production. If you are deficient in certain nutrients like fiber, like fat, those are all going to affect the breakdown, elimination, and production of hormones. Okay. And again, when we're talking, you know, when you're thinking like, oh my gosh, like you're talking about breaking down hormones or production of hormones, I'm also talking about progesterone. And I want to just pause for a second here. You know, the whole purpose of doing this training on hormone imbalance is that a lot of the symptoms of estrogen dominance are going to affect your libido. Okay. So like a woman who is constantly irritable, moody, is probably not going to like her husband or partner most of the time, right? If she's gaining weight, she's not feeling comfortable in her body, most likely, especially so if it's abrupt and all her usual tactics are not working and she doesn't know what to do and she's frustrated. That's going to affect her libido. Okay. What we're going to talk about coming up in a bit is also going to affect her libido. If she's getting her period all the time, if it's heavy, she's not going to want to be intimate. Okay. So like you can see how the symptoms of estrogen dominance can affect her desire to connect with her partner and be intimate. And what we're going into in depth here is like, okay, so we know that. And a lot of women want to just go right to their hormones, and hormones definitely could be part of the picture when it comes to libido. But what I'm doing here is, yes, here are your symptoms of estrogen dominance, all of which can spill over to affecting your desire to connect and be intimate with your partner. Now let's talk about what is causing that. And in part 2 of this training series, next week, we're actually going to talk about what you can do about it. Okay. So we talked about the toxins. We talked about extra adipose tissue or obesity, especially around the belly. We talked about alcohol. We talked about mineral deficiency or nutrient deficiency. We didn't really talk about the gut yet, and that's in the liver. We kind of touched on the liver with alcohol, but your liver also can be compromised by use of medications and other toxins that it has to neutralize prior to breaking down hormones. So there's that. So going back to the pesticides and in the food and the endocrine disrupting chemicals, like we have to take that all into account, because they are not only directly affecting our hormone levels, but they're also affecting the liver and our liver's ability to break down the hormones because it's breaking down other toxins. Okay. But then let's move down a little bit further and talk about the gut. We need the gut to be moving, and we need the bacteria in the gut to be healthy and happy in order to break down the estrogens. There is actually an enzyme in some of the gut bacteria called beta glucuronidase, which actually will help with the metabolism of estrogen. Okay. So if we don't have appropriate levels of that enzyme and the appropriate amount of bacteria that produce this enzyme to help with the estrogen metabolism, we're going to have higher levels of circulating estrogens in our body because we're not breaking them down. And if we're not going to the bathroom, pooping, we're not going to be getting rid of them. Okay. So there's that issue also that we have to talk about. And remember, I did say there was another factor that will affect your desire to connect and be intimate with your partner, also known as your libido, and that is stress. Stress has an impact on the hormone pathways. So I'm not going to get super sciencey on you, but what you have to know is that estradiol, also known, a lot of people call it estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and our stress hormone cortisol all come from a precursor called cholesterol. It all flows down, and you have different pathways, and your body can choose where it wants to put the precursors to these hormones. If you are super stressed, there is a concept called progesterone. It's actually called pregnenolone steal, but you essentially do not make your progesterone. You steal the precursors to make cortisol. You steal DHEA, you steal the precursors for testosterone. Okay. So like this will give you a deficiency or lower level of progesterone because you're shunting everything to make that stress hormone cortisol because you're so dang stressed and your body wants you to survive. The other thing you have to remember is that if you're super stressed, your ovaries essentially will shut down. It is not the time to be making babies when you are super stressed. So your progesterone level, you're not going to what they call ovulate. You need to ovulate in order to make progesterone. You're going to have a super low undetectable progesterone level. That alone with a little bit of estrogen is going to put you out of whack. Okay. We need to get in control of our stress. Okay. Because that alone will affect your libido. And then all of the hormonal side effects of a high stress level is going to do the same. Okay. So in summary, we looked at specifically estrogen dominance, what causes it, what are the symptoms. A lot of those symptoms will affect you, how you feel about yourself, what's going on up in your mind, in your head, and your desire to be intimate. And, some of the causes as far as, toxins and pesticides and alcohol and nutrition all play a part. So if you are watching this training and thinking, gosh, she's talking about me, I have a lot of those symptoms. I have a low libido, right? I'm gaining the weight, no energy, my stress levels through the roof. Ding, ding, ding. There's one cause, right? The purpose of going through this is that if you're that person who's been whatever happened with your doctor, or maybe you don't even want to go, you want this information. We went through the causes. Do any of those pertain to you? I'm telling you right now, if you're eating a standard American diet of highly processed food with lots of added sugars, they are nutrient deplete. There's no nutrition in it. I don't care what the box says as far as fiber. And this is probably disrupting your hormone levels. Okay. Not helping your weight gain. In addition to your stress level. You see where I'm going here? It's like all the things that contribute to the estrogen dominant picture will affect your desire to be intimate. When we get to the root cause and figure out, okay, why? How many of the ding dings did you get as I was speaking? And where can you start making changes? And I'm all about, if you're in my world, if you've worked with me one-on-one or in my groups, I'm all about micro shifts. Where can we start making these little shifts in our day-to-day life to try to start eliminating a lot of these things that could be affecting our hormone levels? And in part 2 of this training, we're going to go a little more detail. I'm going to hold your hand a little bit more and give you the how-to as far as how to start reversing this estrogen dominance. But in case you missed it again, I did an entire Facebook training today in my community on natural ways to help with hormone balance. So we specifically talked about diet. We're next week going to talk about lifestyle, and then we're going to talk about supplements. Everyone always wants to talk about supplements. I always say you can't out supplement a poor diet, a poor lifestyle. Those are icing on those, just like medications cover up symptoms, like put Band-Aids on them, don't really take care of them. A lot of the things that I talk about will help take care of your symptoms and the underlying root cause. Supplements are just icing on a cake. Okay. So I thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned for part 2 of this series. And I look forward to seeing you in my Facebook community where we are taking a deeper dive into this topic. And can't wait to see you again next week. All right. Take care. Bye.